Hello, everyone. Happy Friday yet again. We are coming to the end of May already. Unbelievable. Which means there's only a couple more weeks until the museum reopens once again to the public. June 15th, it's coming. I hope you're ready and excited just as much as we are. In fact, June 1st will be the first time you'll be able to begin making admission reservations from our website, museumofmakingmusic.org. Absolutely excited about that and looking forward to welcoming everyone back to the Museum of Making Music. In the meantime, I'm really looking forward to welcoming our guest today, social media strategist for Reverb.com, Mallory Nees. Reverb.com, in my humble opinion, has been really making waves in the way that folks like you and I are getting access to musical instruments, how those are becoming provided to the users now. It's basically a connecting model for people that have instruments that are, don't need them, aren't using them nearly as much as they should, and the instruments aren't getting loved. Instruments need to be loved. They need to make music. So Reverb has a platform that they've been able to continue to have to connect those people who want to love on the instruments with those who are need to go and explore new instruments on their own. So Mallory is going to tell us all about her experiences as a musician, her career, and what it means to be a part of the Reverb.com ecosystem, making more music makers. Welcome today, everyone. Happy to have you here, Mallory.
Hey, I'm happy to be here virtually.
Virtually, and that works. We're really happy to have you here, Mallory. And as I was telling you earlier, you are a rock star here at NAMM, so kudos to you and thank you again for being with us. Before we jump in, I do want to thank Brooke Covanda. She works in public relations there for Reverb.
Thank you, Brooke.
Yeah, Brooke, thank you. You just did a tremendous job of getting all the pieces in place, lining this up so we could have Mallory here today. And we were talking, Mallory, about sort of the mission statement at Reverb.com, and I know you are a great champion of that. I want to read that to kick us off. Mallory supports a fast-growing company and an ever-growing audience of Reverb devotees in, and I love this part, the quest to make the world more musical. Kudos to you for that, Mallory. Thank you. Now, I watched you during our Believe in Music Week last January and immediately knew I had to get you on the show. Your passion for what you do is evident. You're just very excited about what you do. And I want to start out by asking for the uninitiated, which would be me, what exactly is a social media strategist?
Oh, well, I should know.
If not, this is going to be a very short interview.
I'd be like, well, do you want to talk? No. I would say at the job's core, a social media strategist is responsible for developing and enacting the plans that will boost a company's message and mission statement online. And I see it as a kind of a jack of all trades position because it does involve a lot of devising and creating engaging content, copywriting, curation, analytics, customer service. And I guess there's also like a little bit of a crystal ball gazing and a healthy dose of like understanding human psychology.
Okay.
That's how I would describe it.
Now, in your role, are you the social media strategist, or are there others that you work with in that department?
I am the social media strategist, but I do have folks that definitely lend me a hand in figuring out what is a fun thing to post, when to post it, help me really craft those amazing puns that everybody is so excited about on our Instagram posts. I see I found my pun audience. So
I knew I liked you for a reason. And don't hold back, okay? Feel free to drop them in as we go.
May I just add, let's not go crazy on the puns. Bill says don't hold back, and I'm going to maybe just a little bit. But no, you guys have fun.
We'll have fun as we have fun. I read in the notes here, there's something like 2.4 million social media subscribers to Reverb. Am I sort of correct on that number?
Yeah, that sounds about right. There's a lot.
That's a huge audience to manage. Yeah. Now, are a lot of them then contacting you directly at Reverb and saying, "Hey, Mallory, I'm looking for an Echoplex from 1961," or what kind of questions do you get from people through social media?
Not so much, "Hey, Mallory," just because situations like this are really moments where I'm like the person that comes out from behind the curtain that's been controlling the puppets all along. But like when I'm managing our social media and when I'm responding to folks that contact us, it's very much just a friendly orange circle with an R in it. So they have no idea who I am. But people do, if they see something on Reverb that they're interested in, sometimes they'll contact us, and we'll either redirect them to our customer support team who can help them get more information, or if I know the answer to the question or can easily access it, based on the fact that I work with a bunch of total gearheads who are great resources for me. I'm always happy to engage people and learn along with them and help them find what they're looking for.
Sure. I mean, if they ask you for something that you've never heard of before, you're going to learn what that is in the process, and you just add that to your bag of tricks, right?
Yeah.
So you're helping to satisfy people that are looking for a particular instrument. Is there also a lot of marketing that goes along with that, where you say Reverb just brought in X number of wah-wah pedals that we've acquired, things of that nature?
Definitely. I mean, the social media strategist role sits on the marketing team. And so a lot of what I do is working with the rest of the folks on the marketing team to find ways to speak to an audience, to new audiences, to people who may not know what Reverb is or what we do, and make sure that we're creating an atmosphere where they feel really welcome, and an experience where they feel really valued and inspired. So yeah, everything that I do is marketing, but a lot of it is just working within my little realm of expertise to give them inspiration to head over to Reverb and see what else is there. Got it.
Okay, so directing the traffic to Reverb. So now, social media, I mean, really, it hasn't been around that long in the grand scheme of things, but it certainly has become part of our everyday lives. When did this role of social media strategist evolve? When did that come to be?
I certainly am not sure of the date, but like it couldn't have been that long ago, just because I barely had social media when I was in college, and not that far out of college. But
lucky.
I would say as far as the evolution of the role, I think kind of historically with any advancement in the methods that businesses use to communicate with large groups of people, whether that's newspapers or radio, television, social media, whatever comes next. It's useful. It's necessary for a business to have somebody who's kind of specifically designated to oversee those communications and make sure that everything is copacetic, because, it takes a lot of time. In social media specifically, there's a certain degree of a technical understanding of how the different platforms function and how all of their algorithms work and change. But it also takes a lot of care, right? And intuition to kind of meet your audience where they are and speak to them authentically. So it is a full-time job for sure.
Absolutely. So if somebody were, say, just out of college and they're looking in the job market, will they find that listed with companies now as one of the job offerings? Social media strategist?
Strategist is probably a role that generally gets filled with somebody who's been at the company for a little time, but there are a lot of entry-level roles in social media managers, social media, support. There's a lot of like community management that is all social media based. So yeah, there's a lot of roles in social media that aren't quite strategist level, but definitely the step to get before I was the social media strategist here, I was the social media manager.
Got it. Okay. And then strategist is really kind of a golden position that you would work your way up to. Yes.
Yeah. You're out there looking at the forest and not just the trees is the goal.
I love it. We're going to steal quotes from you all afternoon long. Great. I can tell.
I'm telling you, gems fall out and I just don't think to pick them up. So by all means, build your wealth.
There's another one right
Pick
there.
up my
BJ, you
debt.
are writing these down, right?
This is a gold mine. Gold mine.
Yeah.
Granted, we don't have to deal with 2 million people. I mean, your role is, the forest or the trees is the perfect expression, because it's just, I can't imagine what that's like, being able to impact so many people in any given moment. So that's super cool. That's amazing.
Absolutely. So, Mallory, I want to back up a little bit, because before you were doing what you're doing now, you had a career path that really mirrors a lot of what we've done as well. You were initially pursuing a career in acting, stage, film, TV credits, music. You're a musician as well. Let's talk about acting for a minute. What do you remember how old you were when the lure of the stage attracted you?
I probably don't even remember it was that. What actually happened was that my dad was the technical director of the auditorium in my hometown.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was a little backstage kid. I was there all the time. I spent so much time in the booth just watching the acts that would come through. And it was like plays, but it was also concerts. And so I'd watch the musicians and the performers from all over the world, like go up and do their sound checks. And I learned about all sorts of different instruments that I might never have heard of otherwise. And I guess it's really no surprise that, like, spending that much time near the stage, I eventually kind of found my way onto it. And then I guess it's also no surprise that I ultimately found myself in a career where I can just keep learning about musical instruments.
Sure. It was kind of in the DNA and being sewn in as you were growing up. As a matter of fact, you started out, from what I've read, with I believe, a lead role in a first grade production.
Oh, yes. Yes. I was starred in the Sneaky Adventures of Peter Rabbit.
I mean,
it was a real, you should have been there. It was momentous. It was profound. Hip hop all over the stage.
I'm sorry, you hopped all over the stage?
Oh yeah. I mean, I studied rabbits. I did a lot of, in-depth character work for that role.
Okay, I know there's a whole boatload of puns in there somewhere, but none of them are coming to me right now. BJ says, thankfully.
BJ's happy for that.
Oh yes, she's on the board. I'm sorry, say that again. I couldn't quite hear you. Okay, all right. One for one, we're done. So as you began acting more, though, and I think it's very cool that, as you said, you studied rabbits, you were really getting into your method for your acting. Was there a point where you set your sights on Broadway and you thought, I want to go all the way? That's where I want to be?
At first, I'm sure, because I think when you're little, like, and you learn what heroes are, you assume that, like, all artists and all actors and all musicians are famous. Like, you assume that's the only way you can be an artist, because every artist you've heard of is famous. So yeah, I'm sure that at some point in time I was just like, well, I'm going to be the next Carol Burnett. And then later you learn that anybody who chooses to make art is an artist, and you don't have to go to Broadway and be a star to do what you love.
Yeah, absolutely true, Mallory. And I think we address that at the museum too, because people do tend to think, like you say, well, to be a valid artist, musician, actor, actress, whatever, you have to be a well-known name, because if not, then you're not validated. And we try and sort of share with kids, no, that's not really true. You're an artist when you sit down in your living room and you play your guitar. You're creating art. So if the rest of the world doesn't know about it, that's okay, because you're still creating art. Now, were there, as you were acting and perhaps looking at Broadway, were there certain actors, actresses that really inspired you, that you looked up to and said, like you said, Carol Burnett? Anybody else?
I said Carol Burnett because that was when I started acting on stage. I was like a real ham. And I think at some point in time, I accidentally did this. Like, I just did it out of habit. And somebody was like, have you been, how old are you? Have you been watching episodes of Carol Burnett? I'm like, no. I think what's funny is that, like, some of my acting inspirations, are also kind of like musicians that I really admired. Like I was relatively young when I saw like Labyrinth for the first time, and I loved David Bowie and Labyrinth. And that also, like, I didn't really understand that he was not an actor initially, that he was, well, actually he was an actor initially. That's a fun story too. He was a mime before he became a famous musician. So there you go.
That I did not know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a lot of my favorite actors are kind of just a little bit out of the ordinary, just like give you something that you're not expecting. And yeah, I would say that that's something that I kind of always, in all aspects of my life, I'm like, I want to give you joy, but I want to give you joy in a way that you don't expect.
And you know what? That's what keeps an actor or an actress compelling. That's what keeps coming back for more. You know, what's going to be the surprise today, right? We were talking about the show Upload before we went on air this afternoon, and you had said a friend of yours is acting on that show. What was his name again?
Oh yeah, Kevin Bigley.
Kevin Bigley. Okay.
Yeah, that was so funny when you referenced it. I was like, I know him. He's one of my good friends.
That is sweet. And you're talking about people who are musicians and actors, actresses. Andy Allo, the star of that show, is a tremendous artist, guitarist, vocalist as well. Quite enjoyed watching her YouTube videos after having discovered her on that show. So sort of one of those bridging both sides of the arts persons. Now, you then went to work for Reverb.com. Did you continue though performing afterwards, stage or music or both?
Oh, if you only knew about the opportunities that I have had to put my theatrical talents to use.
Well, let's hear about them.
I encourage you to seek out Andy and the Espresso Machine, which is a video on YouTube. And I can only really describe it. It actually takes place in a room right down the hall from where I'm sitting right now. And it's got everything. You laugh, you cry. It's devastating. It's beautiful. It's got some really killer performances in it. So yeah.
Andy and the Espresso Machine. Can we put that in the show notes, BJ?
Oh,
I think that's possible for sure.
Okay. Now, is this an ongoing series, Mallory? Will we see episode 1, 2, 3, and 4?
There are a couple of, I mean, this video is a couple years old. It's one that I did kind of right about a year or so after I started working at Reverb, but I've definitely make appearances in Reverb videos every now and then. So you never know exactly there was one that came out on April 1st that I made some appearances in.
No fooling.
No fooling.
Okay.
Actually, much fooling.
That's one of those examples of you never know what she's going to do next, right? So
yeah.
You have to keep tuned
I'm like
in.
the Alfred Hitchcock. Like, I'm going to be in the movie, but you just don't know where. That's what keeps everybody engaged in our YouTube channel.
Fantastic. You got to watch it from start to finish, or you're not going to, you'll miss that moment. Do you do one where you're carrying a cello case onto an airplane? I believe that was one of Alfred's cameos.
I have a feeling, like, nothing against him, but like if I was carrying a cello case, it might obscure me a little bit more than it would have obscured Alfred.
Well put. So here in this area, we have a couple of musical theater organizations, one called Moonlight Amphitheater and San Diego Musical Theater in downtown. And I played in pit bands for them for quite a few years. And from show to show, I kind of noticed the same cast of characters from one show to the next. I would say that's because they are a theater company. Now, as you were acting and going through the ropes there, was there a particular theater company you were associated with?
Well, in Chicago, we're really lucky to not only have some really world-class equity theaters, but also a really thriving storefront scene. And I've worked with all sorts of companies of all sorts of sizes, but I generally worked as a freelance artist. And so I never joined companies, but all of the experiences that I have with the companies that I worked with are great. And working in Chicago theater is a really fascinating and fun experience for the most part. So I don't want to like list any because I'm then forgetting, 19, but regardless of like where you're at, whether you're in Chicago or San Diego or anywhere, I just really want to kind of implore everybody that's listening today to support your local theaters and your local music venues, because I don't know, sharing the magic of live performance is a very awesome thing for a person to decide they want to do with their life. And paying people to keep doing it is also a very awesome thing.
Absolutely true. And that's especially true now, since it has been absent from our lives for so long. I know all the shows I was on tap to do last year were canceled. Obviously they couldn't put them on, but they're starting to generate back. And you just feel it. People feel better now because now we can go out and experience, like you say, live theater. It puts you in a world for 2-3 hours, completely removed from our lives. Yeah, wonderful. Do you do any still today then, as far as getting on stage?
Not really. I haven't really like counted myself out of it completely, but I will say that the work that I do in social media kind of exercises a lot of the same muscles. You know, I'm still getting out there and just entertaining and inspiring an audience. And the primary difference, I guess, is that the audience is much larger. Like, I don't think that I've ever performed for 2.4 million people in my theatrical life. But I don't have to wear a costume to do it. But I get kind of like the same, I don't know, happiness from sharing.
And the same give back from the audience, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's very interactive.
I have to guess that when your 2.4 million audience members give you that standing ovation, you can probably hear it around the world, right?
Yeah, I'm in it for the likes.
In it, gosh, there's another one. I'm in it for the likes. I love this, Mallory. So now you also play keyboards, guitars, vocals, songwriting, kind of the whole package. If I were to come see you in a concert, we've already kind of addressed this, but tell me anyway, what could I expect?
Well, I've actually been playing music for longer than I've been acting. Not much longer, but because, you know, my stellar performance as Peter Rabbit came early.
You started out at the top, and
I peaked when I was 7. It's all been downhill from there. But yeah, I started playing music slightly before that, and I begged my parents to let me take piano lessons because I had seen Little Richard on Sesame Street, and it was a very impactful experience.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I was like, I'm going to be just like Little Richard. I'm going to be just like Little Richard when I grow up. So I begged them to let me take piano lessons. And luckily I have 2 amazing parents who have always been really supportive of my pursuits. Nice. And then from that point on, I kind of just kept learning different instruments and just like picking up different instruments and trying them and writing music. I took voice lessons all through school. And then when I moved to Chicago, I'd been in several bands, and I played at piano bars after Cubs games, which is a whole experience that you really have to just do it to know. Improv shows, I accompanied a lot of improv shows. And so, yeah, I've done a lot of the music stuff since I've been in Chicago, but with my original music, I write it, and I have a small orchestra of instruments at my apartment, which is like something that just naturally happens when you spend your days looking at reverb.com. You just hear a lot of instruments. But to be honest, I don't play my original work out publicly very much because I mostly make it for myself as an outlet, just to kind of experiment. And so I guess what I'm saying is don't hold your breath for my EP.
I won't, but I think when I was researching for today, came upon a couple of your originals in a live YouTube performance, and they were great.
Oh,
so
yeah, thank you.
If you ever change your mind on the EP, we'll be ready to hear it. I have to say, you are probably the first person I've ever talked to who said, I begged my parents for piano lessons. Kudos to you for being that person. Usually it's the other way around. Now, you had said your father was the stage manager, and you got a lot of backstage time there. Were mom and dad also musicians?
My mom will always say that she's not musical, but she has a really beautiful voice. And so that's something that I grew up around, is like my mom and I just driving in the car and like harmonizing to the oldies channel. And it was very, it was very Norman Rockwell. Norman Rockwell is a painter.
Rockwell.
I was like, I'm going to get this wrong.
But nailed it.
So that's a very sweet memories of like driving with my mom in the car and singing along to the Beatles on the radio. And then my dad also plays the guitar. He's really great. In fact, they just moved to Virginia, and there is a lineup of like local artists that play during their market, like their I'm trying to remember exactly what it is, but they have like a community market type thing, and he's really excited because he's rehearsing a set of songs to perform at that. So we have a very musical family.
Okay, that's wonderful. Is he doing a solo set, or is he playing with a band?
Yeah, solo set.
Solo, man.
Yeah.
Those are tough. Good for him. Yeah, I mean, you've got nobody to bounce off, right?
I know he has the perfect guitar because he has been flipping guitars on Reverb for like the last couple of years. He's always buying them, trying them, selling them, buying a new one, building a collection.
He kind of has an in there, right? Somebody might be able to steer him in the right direction.
He knows who to contact to find the real deals.
So Mallory, when you began at Reverb, I'm going to guess your performing career was still moving along. Was Reverb sort of a stopgap or something to help you pay the bills, or were you at that point, looking for a career?
I mean, I'll always love acting, right? I have a degree that says I do, but but truly, in my theatrical life, even my interest really started gravitating away from working on stage and started moving towards music, like music composition, music direction. I wrote a lot of arrangements and scores for theater and film projects, and that was work that I found really rewarding. And that shift happened before I even had heard of Reverb, and certainly before I applied for a job there. But as you can imagine, when I saw the opportunity to take that sort of reinvigorated or rediscovered passion for playing music and turn that into a career, applying to work at Reverb just felt like it might be a pretty good move. Turns out it was.
Right. And as you've said, a lot of what you do there at Reverb sort of aligns with the acting, the performing, the music, and so on and so forth. Can you think of any sort of specific examples where your performance skills have, you're doing something with a customer and you go, wow, that's exactly like that moment on stage when I delivered this line or when I had to react to that event that happened. You know what I mean? Are there parallels that you notice?
There are.
Often?
There are a lot of parallels, I would say. Yeah, like the likes are kind of the analog to the applause that you would get at the end of a performance. And I'd say that the biggest parallel is probably just the work that you do before you take the stage, which is like fostering a genuine interest in the humans who are going to be digesting what you're presenting.
Right.
To be effective, I think, in speaking to any audience, and this goes for people who do social media or for people who are in the theater and acting or performance space in any way, there's just an element of like putting yourself into the audience's shoes to understand what really piques their interest and letting their enthusiasm for the subject matter at hand kind of guide the way in which you address it. Yeah. And I think that's what it is kind of taking a deep dive into the psyche of your audience members and seeing what you find there.
There you go. So the audience members for Reverb, obviously those who are looking for the perfect piece of vintage gear that they want to add to their array of tools. And you're keeping those receptors open so that you can kind of sense what they are after, which is going to create a much more symbiotic relationship between you and the purchaser. Now, obviously, when you perform on stage, at the end of the show, applause, applause. Do you get from Reverb customers applause in the form of, I just want to thank the social media strategist who really guided me in the right direction?
I want to let you know, just to give you further proof that puns are still alive and well in this world, even on social media. On a regular basis, we will post a truly groan-worthy caption or social media copy And there'll almost always be somebody in the comments section that's like, I don't know who you are, Reverb social media person, but this caption with aces. And I'm like, I know.
What a way to get people on board, right? I mean,
Yep.
yes, if I was cruising around the internet and I had no idea who reverb.com was and I saw something like that, I'd be on board for life. No doubt. Now you've dropped a lot of great quotes here today, quotable lines, and here is one that I read, and this is a quote of yours too. I want to share this. The secret to feeling like you're part of a community is seeing yourself represented within it. Now that kind of speaks to where we were just a second ago, but how did you come about that philosophy?
Well, I came about it naturally. I think a lot of people might naturally come to the same sort of realization just from their lived experiences. For example, well, like when I was in 4th grade, my dad took me to a shop to buy my first electric guitar, which for those who are curious, it was a Squire Strat Midnight Blue, and I still have it. So,
yeah.
And I knew how to play guitar. My dad had taught me. I would even go so far as to say that I was getting kind of good at the guitar. But then you go into the store, and when I was in 4th grade, like all the posters on the wall, the artists on the cover of the magazines, it's like Eric Clapton, it's Stevie Ray Vaughan, it's Slash, and the other patrons at the shop, the people that were working there, were all men. And I don't know if that's something that I was aware of at the time, like I don't think that that's something that affected my relationship with the instrument, but I can see a situation where it might have, like where I might have felt like I wasn't supposed to be playing guitar, like I wasn't invited to that particular community. And that was kind of, I think that informs a lot of people's experiences, because representation matters. And so looking at where we are now, like 20 years later, it makes me incredibly happy to see how far we've come, because then there are people like St. Vincent or Yvette Young or her, and they're not only amazing players, but they're all represented like with their own signature guitars, which is incredible. And just seeing how much progress has come just even in my lifetime between my 4th grade guitar buying experience and now, I'm really excited for the kids that are out there buying guitars and for the kids that are going to be out there buying guitars in 20 years. Yeah.
Because they're not looking at posters of, as you said, all males playing the guitars. Now they're seeing the whole spectrum. Yeah, exactly. We have a video in one of our touchscreens at the museum. Tremendous young guitarist, Jackie Venson. BJ, am I getting that name correct? Okay.
That's correct.
And it sounds like you know her as well. Yes, Mallory. Tremendous energy. I mean, you just feel happy watching her play. So I want to back up, because that's very astute that you noticed that in 4th grade, where are the women who play guitars?
And it wasn't for lack of having them, right? Like Sheryl Crow was on the radio. Right. You had tons of Joan Jett available icons. It's just that they weren't getting quite the same respect in the musical instrument industry specifically, as opposed to the music industry.
So as you said, you felt like, wow, am I playing the right instrument? Should I be playing this instrument? Did that moment sort of shift in your mind and you said, yes, by gosh, I'm gonna play this instrument? I mean, was that the thinking that brought it about?
Well, I don't think it was. I don't know that I had that. I was pretty headstrong, and so I kind of wasn't the type to let anything dissuade me. And I just kept at it and kept playing guitar. But I will say that like the music that I played, it was a lot of like learning to play a Foo Fighters song, learning to play a Blink-182 song, and all of those are also male-fronted bands. So it was an issue there too. But I certainly didn't I don't think that I consciously realized that was happening. But looking back on it with new perspective and seeing how far we've come is like, oh, that's an enlightening thing.
Yeah, and fortunately, it didn't dissuade you. I mean, one of my favorites for quite some time has been Bonnie Raitt. I mean, she tears it up like nobody's business.
Truly.
So, and good for her. You know, if she had said when she was a young up and coming player, "Wow, it's all men, forget it. I'm going to take up a different instrument," we wouldn't have her to talk about it in that regard.
Exactly.
So bless both of you for hanging tough. Now, one of the things that you did, I believe this was your idea. You started incorporating faces in the photos of the Reverb.com social media postings.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of a joint effort for sure.
Okay.
Our design team and who helps do the photography and everything for our advertisements is very heavily involved in a lot of the aesthetic of what we post on Reverb and how our site looks. And so it's always a conversation with them to see what the best trajectory forward is. But ultimately, it's always about being thoughtful about what you're putting into the world. Reverb's mission, as we mentioned, make the world more musical. And to do that effectively, we're always setting out to foster a friendly and passionate and accepting community of buyers and sellers that are as diverse as music itself. And so on social media specifically, that means creating a space where all music makers feel welcome. And whether we achieve that by featuring different categories of instruments or exploring different genres of music or showcasing different types of players, that's definitely a passion of mine. And in fact, something that I specifically love doing is finding clips of like incredible musicianship on Instagram. I mean, you can find them all over social media, but Instagram is a real hotbed. And connecting with the artist, asking for their permission to share it with our followers. And it's just a really great experience for everybody involved because it gives me I get really excited about like stumbling upon this incredible video of like this kid totally nailing Tupac's California Love with just a synth in a talk box, or a woman who's absolutely destroying in the best possible way, like My Heart Will Go On, but she's playing it on the automaton, which I don't know if you've ever seen one.
No,
Definitely,
I don't know what that is.
So strange. They look like the TikTok icon. Like they look like a little musical note, but they have a little bulby little head that opens and closes to make noise. I was like, it's so strange. It's the most.
We have one here at the house.
That's right. We have some.
My son has one, and I'm like, what is that? I'm like, gosh, it's almost like a theremin, or just it is a wonky instrument. What is this video? My Heart Will Go On the automaton. I'm gonna have to check this out.
Yeah,
like somebody with skill doing it.
We shared it on our Instagram page, but I think it was back in like December or January. I remember thinking like, this is the perfect thing to start out the year with.
Yes.
Well, what's so great about what you've just said, Mallory, is that this is something that couldn't have happened 20, 25 years ago, right? You're opening the door to so many people who otherwise would not have gotten the chance to be heard at all, except maybe by the neighbors, by their family and friends. So I can't imagine anybody ever saying, no, I don't want you to share my information.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely like, I will never share without having somebody's permission.
Of course.
It's always really great because like suddenly, maybe they'll have a couple thousand followers and they're trying to kind of get their music career started. And then Reverb will share their video and tag them in the post, and suddenly they'll double their audience.
Right.
And so it's great because I clearly am a fan. And so I want them to succeed. And then, the audience, our Reverb audience gets the same joy that I got of discovering that. And to be perfectly honest, from a business perspective, like if a video is that entertaining, it's going to get a lot of views. And so it's good for analytics as well, but that's kind of like it's a very distant third to the other.
That's not what you're thinking when you do this, but that's one of the results. I mean, I imagine you have to have seen a tremendous shift in the Reverb.com paradigm when you open that door up. Yes. As far as more people discovering you, reaching out to you.
I mean, most of the things that we just discussed are kind of my corner of the Reverb universe.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole team is dedicated to creating a really inclusive space where folks from all different backgrounds who play all different types of instruments and music can discover new gear and explore and feel seen. And for my teammates and I guess that dedication it's an ongoing practice. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not just taking time out of our regularly scheduled program to commemorate a particular day, a particular month. It's a forever task. It's a forever joy. And I'm lucky also in that I get to see the shift kind of firsthand based on how our community interacts with us.
Mm-hmm.
There's an adage in social media that's don't read the comments. And
is that right? Okay.
yeah. But as a social media strategist, I am a professional reader of the comments. And recently, that was a really good thing. Because the overwhelming understanding of social media comments is that everybody just goes there to be just mean and hateful and trolling. But that really hasn't been my experience with our audience.
Good.
And it was especially wonderful because earlier this year, it must have been during Women's History Month, I think, just out of context. But one commenter had written, and I'm definitely going to paraphrase this, but they wrote something like, I really love Reverb's feed because they always feature cool musicians that just happen to be women. And thank you for like helping to normalize women's aptitude in music by presenting it as something totally normal. And that made me really choked up because I was like, this person has noticed what I've been doing all this time. And it just, it's really rewarding to see people appreciating the effort that we've put in.
Oh, that's wonderful. That just makes you feel like, A, my plan is working, and B, people are getting it. And thank you to the people who are getting it and feeding it back to me, because there's that synergy all over again. Yeah, I mean, diversity really is opening up performers, innovators, company owners, instrument makers. If you were to give 3 tips to other companies who want to make a positive impact in this way or any way through social media and marketing, maybe not necessarily music per se companies, but just 3 companies, 3 tips.
Sure.
What would you suggest?
Yeah, I think, I guess first off, knowing kind of when to, I mean, I'm using a music term, but pass the mic, when to share the mic, and let others do the talking is key to making a positive impact on social media, like being a good follower and showing your support in comment threads outside of your own page, and connecting with people that you admire and amplifying their work by sharing it with your audience. It's just it's a really great way to achieve this from a social media perspective, because you're participating in the conversation, you're listening, but you're not controlling the conversation.
Okay.
So yeah, share the mic. Second would be, I guess, set the table so that you can attract the audience that you want. We discussed this earlier, but a person is more likely to follow you or engage with you on social media if they see themselves represented in what you're already doing. So always keep that in mind and make sure that people feel comfortable when they show up on your page. And then I guess my last piece of advice would be to own your mantra. And I've already talked about this a couple of times, but Reverb's mantra is make the world more musical. And whether you share that same mantra or if you find something that just like really speaks to what your mission statement is, what your guiding light is as a brand or as a company or just as a person who wants a bigger spotlight on social media, just keep that in the back of your head and let it guide your strategy. Like make sure that it makes sense, that it influences everything that you share.
Right. Okay. Very important tips. I hope people are taking notes out there, because that just kind of nailed it. 1, 2, 3. Now in Reverb, in the company, I imagine there's quite a few employees. Do you have a rough estimate of how many people work for Reverb?
I actually don't. And the reason for it is that I'm pretty good at guesstimating. Like I'm good at the jelly bean game,
Yeah.
how many jelly beans are in the jar. And I haven't been in the same room with my coworkers for over a year.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't have like a particular estimate, but there are a lot of people that I work with on a day-to-day basis, but virtually for now. But
Sure. Yeah. That's coming to a close. We're all hopeful. But there are different, obviously, there's your team, there's other teams spread throughout reverb.com. Now, is there a fair amount of interplay from one team to the next?
oh, definitely.
What would an example be? I don't know what the other teams would be there. So if you could pick one and then say, how would the social media, social strategy work with that particular team?
Absolutely. Well, one of the most obvious connections is the connection between social media and customer support. A lot of people will go to social media and ask questions about like, how do I this? What happens if I this? And making sure that you have a really strong connection with your customer support team is key to being successful on social media. And luckily we have like a really wonderful customer support team, so it's not that hard, but
good.
But then of course, like it's important to have conversations with all of the teams and make sure that you're kind of aware of what everybody's up to. Like if there's a new feature that's launching on the app, I want to know about it so I can hype it on social media. If there's, anything that comes up from a content perspective, like if an artist reaches out to us on social media, I immediately loop in like our artist relations team and our video team and see if there's any way that we can work with them. And in fact, I work with our artist relations person quite a lot, and she and I collaborated on a campaign that happened earlier this year where we reached out to kind of the greater Reverb team and crowdsourced some incredible women artists that they wanted to see featured on Reverb that we hadn't worked with in the past. Okay. And so we reached out to those women and asked them to share their inspiration, like who's your inspiration? And that ultimately became our She Set the Tone campaign. Oh, nice. And it was great. We had like really cool women that we were able to interview and share their stories on social media, like Molly Tuttle and like Lizzie Hale and Nandi Bichelle. It was great. And then what was even greater, which is something that I hadn't even anticipated when we started the conversation, was that the women that they referenced as their heroes were sharing these assets that Reverb created with their social media audience. So like we got retweeted by like Pink, and like Patrice Rushen shared us in their Instagram stories. Like Sheila E. shared a couple of our Instagram posts, and I was like, Sheila E.
Boy, there's some connections. So really keeping the radar up so that you know what this department's doing, what that department's doing, and then keeping the lines of communication wide open so that everybody is in touch and in tune with what the other departments are doing. Now, I know you've said today is your second day actually in the office in a year. Is that correct?
Oh, well, I'm just here. I'm here. I have special permission because I'm here talking to you.
Correct. Well, of course.
Normally, on any other day, I would be in my apartment, but
right.
I live right by the L, so you wouldn't me every 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay. The only reason I went there, and thank you, Reverb, for being so gracious, is obviously in this past year you haven't been, and no one else has been in the office. But when you are under normal circumstances, are there times when the entire group gets together for a large sort of powwow to say, here's where we are right now and here's where we're going? Do you have those large meetings?
And actually we still have them virtually. We do have our all hands meetings that happen every couple of weeks. And it's really important to kind of just like get updates from the folks at the company. They've really evolved in the manner in which they happened. It used to be just like we would all gather in the basement and stand in a circle, and everybody made Fight Club jokes.
Y'all brought djembes and had a drum circle.
Basically, there is a gong down there, so yeah, we could have easily had a very singular drum circle, but But yeah, it's great. Just like and it's also really important, I think, and this is something that I've been missing this year, and I'm sure a lot of people have been, is just like kind of putting a face with the work that's being done. Because when you're communicating with people primarily via chat, you're like, well, I know their name and I know what they do, and I have a good relationship with them, I think, because, you know, we're all just typing. But then when you like see their face, you're like,
Nothing like
so
in
I
person.
definitely miss my people, but I'm really excited that I'll get to see them again not too long from now.
Coming soon. That's right. So Mallory, I'm gonna true confession here. I grew up obviously with brick and mortar stores, and it's still a more comfortable zone for me. That's what I've done. If I bought something, it didn't work, I'd bring it back to the store. Now, in the case of a Reverb purchase, if somebody gets something and it's just not working, not doing what they thought it was going to do, what would the return situation be like when they want to send that back?
Oh, sure. Well, because Reverb was built by a team of musicians, we really want to make sure that the buying and selling policies align with our expectations as musicians, because like buying an instrument is an investment and selling an instrument can be really deeply personal. And so in the case that like you purchase something and something happened, maybe it got damaged in transit, because every once in a while it does, you know, it happens. It's
Sure.
a thing, but like we do have buyer protection. So if you receive it, just let us know that there's something wrong with it, and we'll work with you and the seller to make sure that everything gets taken care of. And
okay, good. So it's the same customer service, just a different platform for getting it handled. Now, in your work, have you ever found it necessary or just desired to confer with traditional store owners, brick and mortar owners, for suggestions and advice in your particular job?
yeah, I mean, it's not so much, I don't do that as much, but like we have teams, our outreach team, for example, our support team to a certain extent, our development team, and they're constantly in touch with our sellers who sell on the platform and asking for feedback about a new feature, or asking for feedback about a change to the layout, just to learn what we can do to make it easier for them to connect with the perfect buyers for their gear. And then for my part, I've always kind of got my eyes on Reverb, looking for cool instruments, looking for cool shops and builders that I can spotlight on social. And that can be rewarding in its own way, is kind of like the surprise and delight element of a shop getting tagged on social media posts from Reverb. There was one not terribly long ago, I found this a shop in Australia called Small Island Amps, that they list on Reverb, and they make guitar amps out of repurposed vintage transistor radios.
Oh, wow.
And they're just very aesthetically cool, and they're also really cool sounding.
Nice.
And so I featured one of those on our Instagram post, and everybody, like the world exploded. And everybody's like, where do I get one of these?
Wow.
And so then the seller was just delighted, because they were like, where did all this business suddenly come from? Like, from Reverb's Instagram page. You're welcome.
Exactly. What an amazing,
cool gear.
that's an amazing service you're providing. Let me flip that question back around now. Have you ever been contacted by a brick and mortar store? Say somebody who's been in business for 50 or 60 years, and they've got a real traditional way of doing business. Have you ever had one of them or one or more contact you and say, tell me about this social media, because I'm not really hip to it. How can I get on board? Can you help me out? Have you had people reach out to you for that?
Yeah. And what actually, it's not generally not this shop themselves that reaches out to me. But they almost, so many brick and mortar shops, they already use Reverb, and they're always looking for new ways to make Reverb work for them a little bit better.
Right.
And so they'll contact our support team or our outreach team. And I have provided both of those teams with a list of like good tips for sellers to succeed on Reverb, and what's going to make your listing more attractive on Facebook, what you should post on Instagram or what kind of hashtags you should use. Like I've shared, that's one of the ways in which I work with the teams, is I share all of that knowledge so that if they have a seller who's really trying to make a bigger impact on social media, they have all of my best resources available in a little list that they can access pretty easily. Or you can come see me speak at NAMM and absorb the wisdom there.
From what I heard with NAMM this morning, it'd probably be a tough ticket to get in to see you speak at the NAMM show.
Standing remotely.
Oh, goodness, Mallory, we're almost to the hour. I do have a couple of questions if I can send them your way. But let me say, what you have just said just proves one more time, as humans, we are always afraid of the new, right? And so when selling online became a thing, I think there was probably this undercurrent of fear. Oh my gosh, there goes my business. But you have proven once again that no, your business stays viable. We stay viable, and we work together, and we bring the best of what each other offers, and we keep us in business. I mean, I've lived through 4-track, 8-track cassette, home movies, and every industry thought they were dead once those things came out, but they're still here, as are those things. All right. I'll get off my soapbox here. We have a tremendous team of volunteers at the museum. As you can imagine, they really, one of our coworkers, Elisa, describes them as the heartbeat of the museum, and they really are. They're the ones that keep us going from day to day, so we can't thank them enough. Brian asks, for those who are still discovering what Reverb is and does, how would you explain it? I think we kind of have, but if there's more to add, that's fine. But he also then follows that with, do I sell my guitar to Reverb or via Reverb? Do I send it to Reverb or send direct to the buyer?
Yeah, so that's a great question, actually, and I'm happy to elaborate. Reverb is a third-party marketplace. So you would, as a seller, if you had a guitar to sell, if you had an instrument to sell, you would create a listing for free. You would be able to select the photos that you want to include, and you set the shipping rate. You decide where you'd be comfortable shipping it to when someone buys it, and then it just exists on the reverb.com website for buyers all over the globe to appreciate. And then when one of them finds it and is interested in purchasing it, then you'll work with them directly and send it to them directly. So it's really just, we're just here to host everybody else's listings.
Okay, so you're the liaison almost. We've got this for sale here in Australia. Brian here in California is interested, and you connect the dots for them. Great.
Exactly.
One more from Brian. And now, Brian, you got to be very careful here because he's asking, how does Reverb define vintage? You got to be careful when you're asking me that question, Brian. I'm going to ask you this question.
Sure.
Some say 100 years old is vintage. Some say 40 years old is vintage. Would my 75 Martin Dreadnought be considered vintage?
Now, based upon this definition, I would be vintage now. So I don't. Does Reverb have a definition for vintage?
You do, and based on Reverb's definition, I am also vintage.
No way.
But yeah, so the prescribed term, and this is not just our site, but I think a lot of other places that deal in used gear and vintage gear. The prescribed term vintage is for gear that is 30 plus years old.
Okay. What does that make me? 2.5 times. Well, okay. Let's get off the vintage subject.
Double or triple vintage, Bill. Come on now.
What? I feel like a whiskey or a wine now. All right. We're going to wrap up here, Mallory, with a couple more questions because it is the hour, 3:00, and I want to respect your time. But I do want to ask, the Museum of Making Music, as I think we told you, has just completed just a beautiful floor-to-ceiling renovation. And as we train our volunteers, we had them watch several NAMM oral history interviews to gain a perspective of the industry. Can you give us some of the influential people in your life from the music industry that you admire and that you look up to?
Oh, sure. Like, who would be on my museum walls?
There you go. Yeah.
The first person that comes to mind in the music industry, just kind of like thinking about my experiences at NAMM, is Laura B. Whitmore, who is the founder of the Women's International Music Network.
Okay.
She's a total force of nature. She's been so instrumental in encouraging me specifically, I feel like, and advancing the visibility of and progress of women in the musical instrument industry in general, and also the She Rocks Awards, which is hosted by the Women's International Music Network, and Laura, almost specifically, is definitely a highlight of most of my NAMM experiences. So she's somebody who immediately comes to mind. And then I guess more locally, there's a non-for-profit organization here in Chicago called Afro Rack. And we work with them through our charitable arm, Reverb Gives. And their mission is to teach synthesis to kids and young adults of color in the city, which is so awesome for our community here. And earlier this year, they actually stepped out of but they, in addition to being in the education space, they stepped into the gear space. And they're devising a product called Sound Sketch, which the way in which it's described to me, it just sounds like it's going to make modular synthesis just so accessible for so many people. And I just find that so inspiring and awesome. So they'd be on my wall too, I think.
You know, it's great that you talk about modular synths. I mean, everything old is new again. I grew up with the Keith Emerson modular synth concerts where he's working that thing like a telephone operator.
Like, what
right?
are you plugging in?
Right. Yeah, I don't know, but he sure knew. And it's just, to me, it's a joy to see them coming back. One of my friends lives up the road. He's got prominently situated in his studio a nice modular synth. So, you know, it's fun seeing all that come back. And it's wonderful that those people inspire you to greater heights. Now, Reverb, if I understand correctly, was just purchased by Etsy, or maybe somewhat recently. Has that really expanded the reach of the company?
Yeah, that happened in 2019. Okay. And I don't know that the reach necessarily expanded, but in my particular view, Etsy really set a standard for what a third-party marketplace can be. And, you know, it has given Reverb historically a lot to aspire to. And so I find that their site really encourages exploration and empowers small businesses and independent makers in the same way that Reverb can. And having Etsy's expertise at our disposal has definitely helped us grow in that way, which I think is really great.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. This has been wonderful, Mallory. And I mean, I know we could go on, but I want to respect your time and, of course, the time of our audience. Just some parting thoughts. If someone wanted to jump into this crazy world we call the music products industry, what would your advice be?
Well, it's actually, you brought this up earlier and it kind of stuck with me, because something that I have learned since being in this industry is that there are so many people in the world who don't consider themselves to be musicians. Like, you'll ask somebody if they play an instrument and they'll be like, well, I play drums, but I'm not like a drummer. And you're like, but yes, you are. You play drums. You're a drummer. Like, you are.
Right.
Because you don't have to be John Bonham and you don't have to be Questlove to be a drummer. And with that in mind, I think that even if you have the remotest interest in being a part of the music instrument industry or the music product industry, it's important to explore it fully, because I think I'm living proof that you don't have to be some kind of a virtuoso gear expert to have a positive impact on the industry, whether that's marketing or tech or engineering or sales. There are just so many different ways to participate in music without being the next Jimi Hendrix. And every voice is valuable and a necessary part of the conversation that keeps all of us moving forward.
Yeah, and you don't necessarily have to play a musical instrument. It helps. It's more. I believe that it's more fun if you do, but you don't have to be part of that family, that part of that community. And I'm really glad you guys are creating community to get more people involved. I've been sitting on this question. Is it okay if I ask you one?
Yeah.
And this brought me back to when at your fourth grade self in the music store. You know, now you have that perspective of hindsight, and it really made me consider. It's like, you know, I was trying to think of times where now that I'm older and I'm trying to realize these different perspectives. Obviously, you know, I come from different experiences too, from the Midwest, but now I'm like, I realize that I start surrounding myself in content and content creators who are helping to create this community, this more inclusivity. And I just realized how grateful I've become for that. Like, if I have an hour-long drive to get down to work, so I'm listening to The Moth, or I'm listening to Snap Judgment, or all these wonderful podcasts whose creators and content managers have developed a tone that brings us all together. It creates this amazing community. Is there, you have boundless inspiration and creativity already, but where do you go for the well? What is your kind of sources of inspiration? Like, maybe, because sometimes the well runs dry, or sometimes you need that kind of that realignment sometimes of that internal compass. Where do you go for that alignment and that spark of energy and influence?
That's a really great question. On social media specifically, I think that a lot of it is actually, and don't tell anybody I said this, but a lot of it is like taking the time to get away from it for a minute, because sometimes the world is too much with us and you don't really appreciate what you're seeing. And having the opportunity to just like take a little time away from social media and then come back to it fresh is good. It kind of also gives the social media algorithm a time to refresh, so that it won't serve you the same rabbit hole that you've already been going down. And you'll be able to, discover exciting new stuff. TikTok is also, like, I know that everybody's talking about TikTok right now. Nobody wants to hear anybody tell them to go on TikTok. It is a wonderful place to explore. And it's just really easy to discover new, really entertaining videos and musicians on TikTok. Like Lil Nas X, huge superstar now, got his start from TikTok. And so it's just really interesting to see like the kind of trajectory that social media can rocket you into a spot as a pop star, and totally deserved, because all of his songs are rad.
That's awesome.
That's great. I got to point out something. We started with rabbits and we ended with rabbits. That was very, very well done, Mallory. Thank you very much.
Oh,
that's why you're the expert, and thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you at a NAMM show someday. Can you hold me a spot? Because I know it'll be tough to get in. So.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
thank you.
Mallory, Mr. Bill, I want to thank you both for being on today's episode. A lot of fun. Thank you so much. Let's go ahead. I'm going to peer a little bit into the future. What beholds us and the next Mom at Home? We are actually going to take next week off. So June 4th. I know we're on the cusp of a long 4-day weekend with Memorial Day weekend. We're going to take June 4th off and come back to you on Friday, June 11th, with Julia Kamanda Jordan. She is an amazing music educator, music advocate. She is also the daughter of Stanley Jordan, the renowned guitarist. And Sandy Jordan also used to be a colleague of ours at the Museum of Making Music. So it's wonderful to see Julia as a very well-respected music advocate. And she's going to be talking about that coming up on June 11th. And then following that, I am excited about this because we have David Castaneda coming Friday, June 25th. So 2 weeks after the 11th. We're going to take a little break off during our grand reopening for the Museum of Making Music, because I expect us to be just crazy frazzled after that. But David is a local San Diego percussionist and academic. He's going to be helping us explore the world of Latin music, Afro-Cuban music, and more. So as a fellow percussionist, this is near and dear to my heart, and I hope you'll join us for both Julia Kamanda Jordan as well as David Castaneda in those next 2 upcoming episodes that will actually only be the 2 episodes we host for June. Peering into the future, we're going to be bringing a few more Mom at Homes to you. Our schedule's going to adjust a little bit as we get reopened and into the summer, but we'll be talking more about that later on. For more information, especially about our grand reopening to the public beginning June 15th, go to our website, museumofmakingmusic.org. If you want to jump the line and go straight to the reopening information, go to museumofmakingmusic.org/reopening. And then you can learn how you can reserve admission tickets, all about our new capacity protocols, and so much more. You'll see what's new there, and we hope you will join us then, as well as next time on Mom at Home. Until then, everyone, take care and have a great Memorial Day weekend.